Part 1. The Origin. Tonight, let's journey into the quiet beginnings of a legend. Not a god, not a billionaire, but a boy from Queens. His name was Peter Benjamin Parker. He lived in a little house on a quiet street with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Not much money, not much attention, but there was love and books and curiosity. Peter was small, skinny, quiet, the kind of boy who sat in the back of the classroom drawing little doodles in the margins of his science textbook. He loved reading. He loved science. And even more than that, he loved the feeling of figuring something out all by himself. He didn't have many friends, and when he walked down the halls at Midtown High, heads turned, not because they admired him, but because someone had a cruel joke to throw his way. But Peter was kind, even when people weren't kind to him. Then came that day, the day that would change his life, the day that would ripple through time like a pebble in the stream of fate. It happened during a school trip to a science exhibit, a demonstration of radiation, of energy, of possibility. He wasn't paying much attention to the other kids. He was focused on the machinery, the displays, the marvel of human achievement. And that's when the spider came down. Small, ordinary looking, it crawled across a beam unnoticed until it wasn't. It bit him. Just a quick, almost invisible moment. And then it was gone. Like the end of a chapter. At first, Peter didn't feel much, a sting, a faint pulse of heat through his veins. And then the changes began. He was stronger, faster. He could stick to walls, leap across rooftops like a shadow in flight. He didn't tell anyone at first. He kept it hidden. But inside, Peter Parker felt something he'd never felt before. Power. And when you grow up powerless, power feels tempting. He made a costume. Not for justice, not at first. He became an entertainer. Wrestling, television. He wore a mask and flipped across screens, cheered on by strangers. He even earned a little money. But fame is blinding, and in his pride, Peter let a thief escape. He had the chance to stop him, but didn't. Not my problem, he told himself, until that same thief would take the life of the one man who believed in him, his Uncle Ben. Peter's world cracked, not with noise, but with silence. A kind of stillness that never really leaves you. He stood over the man who raised him and understood at last, with great power comes great responsibility. From that night on, Peter Parker wasn't just a boy. He became something more, a guardian, a protector, a masked figure who moved through the shadows of New York, watching over the very people who had once ignored him. He called himself Spiderman. And so began the quiet life of a hero, one who still did his homework, still looked after Aunt May, still missed his uncle, but who now carried the weight of a promise. Not for glory, not for thanks, but because someone had to. And because deep down, Peter knew, even heroes feel lonely sometimes, but they do it anyway. Part 2. The early years. When you're young, life already feels like a balancing act. But for Peter Parker, every day became a tightrope walk between two worlds, one foot in high school, the other in something far more dangerous. Because while the world saw a teenage boy walking through the halls of Midtown High, inside his backpack was a red and blue costume. Still warm from last night's rooftop chase? By day, Peter studied biology, physics, and algebra. he sat in the corner of class, raising his hand too often, sometimes forgetting to hide the bruises from last night's fight with a guy who could fly. And when the bell rang, he wasn't heading home to video games or pizza. He was heading out, into alleys and rooftops, because someone had to. New York City was always awake, always shifting, and Peter felt like it was calling out to him, one crime at a time, one scream in the night. And slowly, the city got used to its strange new protector, clinging to walls, swinging through the sky like a thread of red and blue lightning. The Daily Bugle called him a menace. J. Jonah Jameson's headlines were unforgiving. Spiderman terrorizes Midtown. Masked menace strikes again. But Peter didn't care much about the papers. He cared about keeping people safe. Though he did need money, so he sold them photos of Spider-Man. Selfies, in a way. Taken in midair, dodging punches, holding back wreckage. He became his own photographer, and Jonah unknowingly became his paycheck. Funny how life works out sometimes. The villains came quickly, because where there's a hero, chaos always follows. The Vulture came first, an old man with wings powered by stolen tech, soaring over the city full of bitterness and envy. Peter was barely strong enough to stop him, but he did, just barely. Then came the Sandman, a man made of shifting dust and hate, able to collapse into the earth or rise like a storm. The Lizard followed, Peter's own teacher, Dr. Kurt Connors, twisted by science, transformed into a reptilian monster who only wanted to heal, and ended up broken. There was Electro, Rhino, Shocker, men who glowed, charged, and slammed through walls with no thought for the lives around them. Each one stronger, louder, scarier than the last. And Peter, he had no sidekicks, no Batcave, no mentor, just web fluid and willpower. Still, even as Spider-Man grew stronger, Peter Parker felt the world pulling him in all directions. Homework was late, dinners were missed, Aunt May began to worry more often than she let on. Friends didn't always understand why he vanished mid-conversation, why he was bruised on Monday mornings, why he never showed up to parties. And beneath it all was the guilt. For every time he saved the day, there were moments he failed, people he couldn't save, mistakes he couldn't undo. That's the burden of being a hero, especially one without a cape or kingdom, just a city and a promise. But in the quiet hours, when the moonlight poured over the rooftops and the sirens finally faded, Peter would sit on the edge of a building, legs dangling over the city like he was just another kid. And for a few minutes, he could breathe. He could think about his uncle, about who he was trying to become, and why he couldn't stop, even if the world misunderstood him. Because being Spider-Man was never about fame, or revenge, or glory. It was about doing the right thing even when no one clapped for you, even when you were tired, even when you were alone. Tomorrow, he'd do it all again. Homework, villains, pictures for the Bugle, smiles for Aunt May, and another swing into the night. Because that's what Peter Parker does. He falls, he stumbles, he rises, and somewhere in the quiet rhythm of New York's heartbeat, you'll always find him, swinging through the dark, watching over a city that doesn't know his name, but still needs him. Part 3. Love and Loss. Even heroes fall in love, and even heroes lose the ones they love. For Peter Parker, love was never simple, it was never easy, but it was always real. Because behind the mask, behind the wisecracks and the web-slinging, was a boy with a full heart, a boy who longed for connection, someone who saw him, not as Spider-Man, but just as Peter. Her name was Gwen Stacy. She had golden hair, eyes full of curiosity, and a laugh that made the world feel lighter. She was kind, quick-witted, and brilliant, the daughter of a police captain, and Peter fell for her like gravity. They met in college, Empire State University. At first, Peter was quiet, shy, still carrying the weight of his double life. But Gwen saw through that. She saw his awkwardness, his warmth, his heart, and slowly, he let her in. They'd meet between classes, walking across campus beneath autumn leaves. They'd talk about science, books, music, and sometimes they didn't need to say anything at all. For a while, things felt okay. Peter smiled more. He even laughed again. He still fought villains, still swung into danger every night, but knowing Gwen was there somehow made the nights feel shorter, the battles more bearable. She grounded him, reminded him he was still human, still a boy who deserved happiness. But life, especially Peter's, was never that kind for long. Because the villains weren't just thugs or scientists anymore, they were personal. There was one who stood above the rest, the Green Goblin, a man named Norman Osborn, brilliant, wealthy, twisted, and worst of all, he knew who Spider-Man really was. He didn't just want to destroy Spider-Man, he wanted to break Peter Parker. And so one night, on a cold bridge in the city's shadow, he took Gwen. Peter arrived too late. She was unconscious, cradled in the Goblin's cruel arms, high above the water. There were no words, only wind and terror. The Goblin dropped her. Peter reacted instantly, a web shot, clean and fast. It caught her by the ankle. But when he pulled her in, she didn't move, didn't speak. She was gone. Some say the fall killed her, others believe it was the sudden stop, but all Peter knew was that she died, and he couldn't save her. That night, everything changed. Peter held her in his arms, and the world felt still again, but not in peace, in grief. The wind moved through the arches of the bridge, the city lights flickered in the distance, and Spider-Man just knelt there. Not as a hero, not as a symbol, but as a young man who lost the person he loved most. He blamed himself. Of course he did. Because when you have power, loss always feels like your fault, even when it's not. In time, he would smile again. He would love again. He would even laugh. There was Mary Jane, the vibrant redhead with a spark in her eyes and a strength all her own. She was loud where Gwen was quiet, bold where Gwen was calm. But she, too, loved Peter for who he really was. She understood the mask, understood the cost, and she stayed. She saw the pain behind his smile and didn't try to fix it, just held space for it. With her, Peter didn't have to be Spider-Man. He could just be Peter. Messy, flawed, trying his best. And when the world became too heavy, she reminded him that even a hero deserves to be held. Their love wasn't perfect. It had starts and stops, fights and distance, like real love often does. But over time, it grew into something steady, something strong, something worth holding on to. But Peter never forgot Gwen. Not ever. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right across the rooftops, he thinks of her, her laugh, her light, and he remembers what she meant, what she still means. Because love doesn't end when someone's gone. It lives in the quiet corners of the heart, in memories and moonlight, and in the spaces where dreams and shadows meet. That's the price of love and the proof of it. Peter Parker knows it well, but still, he keeps going, swinging into the unknown, with pain in his past, but hope in his hands. Because that's what Spider-Man does.
Part 4. Rogues Gallery.
Every great hero has shadows, not just within, but around them. Figures in the dark, whispers of chaos, reflections of fear, power, or pain. For Peter Parker, they came not in armies, but one by one, each different, each dangerous, each carrying a lesson. They were called villains. But some were just broken men in broken masks. Let me tell you about a few of them, not as monsters, but as stories. The first was an old man with wings, Adrian Toombs, a vulture, a genius betrayed by his partners, angry, bitter. He built a suit with metal wings and took to the sky, not fly, but to take, to claw back what the world had denied him. And Spiderman stopped him, but he understood the loneliness in the old man's eyes, because Peter, too, knew what it was like to be overlooked. Then came a man made of sand, Flint Marko. Once a small-time crook caught in a scientific accident, his body shattered into sand, able to slip through fingers, form tidal waves, and scatter in the wind. He didn't want to destroy the world, he just wanted to go home, to be whole again. And sometimes Peter let him go, because even heroes see the pain behind the punches. Dr. Otto Octavius, a brilliant mind with metal arms fused to his spine, once a kind man driven mad by a lab explosion and the need to control the world that once ignored him. They called him Doc Ock, tentacles curled like steel serpents, but beneath the machinery was a man who just wanted to be respected. Peter saw that, and even in battle he tried to save him, because mercy is also strength. Then there was Mysterio, a magician of mirrors, a master of illusion. He didn't have claws or poison, he had fear. He twisted light and sound until reality bent like glass. To fight Mysterio, Peter had to believe in himself, even when nothing made sense, even when the world looked upside down. And sometimes, isn't that the hardest fight of all? But perhaps the most dangerous was one who didn't just fight Peter. He hated Spider-Man, and he knew Peter's name. Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, wealthy, brilliant, cruel. He soared on a glider, threw bombs like fireflies, and smiled while the world burned. He broke Peter's heart, took from him what could never be returned, and still, Peter didn't kill him. Because Spider-Man doesn't cross that line. He holds it, even when it hurts. There were others, the Lizard, Peter's teacher, Dr. Kurt Connors, who just wanted to regrow his lost arm and became a monster. Kraven the Hunter, a warrior who didn't want to defeat Spider-Man, but to become him. Rhino, a man trapped in armor he couldn't remove, big, loud, alone. Electro, charged with lightning, but powerless inside. Each one a story, each one a lesson. And through it all, Peter never gave up, not because he was stronger, but because he refused to stop caring, even for the villains, even when they didn't deserve it. Because Spider-Man sees the human in everyone, even those who hide behind masks. Some say a hero is defined by his enemies, but Spider-Man is different. He's defined by how he fights them, by the line he never crosses, by the compassion he keeps even when no one sees it. And as he swings into the night above the city that fears and needs him, he carries their stories too, because Peter Parker knows saving someone sometimes means seeing the good that's still inside them, even if they don't. Part 5. The Spider-Verse and Variants. Not every story takes place in the world we know. Some live just outside it, beyond our sky, beyond our stars. There are other realities, other Earths, other Spider-Men. The multiverse is wide, like a dream that never ends. And in that dream, there are countless threads, each one a different version of the hero we call Spider-Man. Some are familiar, some are strange, but all are bound by the same idea, that anyone can wear the mask. Let me tell you about a few of them, softly, like fairy tales, whispered through the fabric of space. There is a world where a boy named Miles Morales was bitten by a spider, not Peter Parker. Miles, he's younger, quieter, full of potential and self-doubt. At first, he didn't think he could be Spider-Man. He wasn't ready. He wasn't Peter. But over time, he learned. He learned that the mask isn't about perfection. It's about heart. It's about doing the right thing, even when you're scared. Miles could turn invisible, send out electric shocks, but his greatest strength was his kindness, his empathy. He honored Peter's legacy and then built his own. There is a world where Gwen Stacy was bitten instead. She became Spider-Woman, sometimes called Spider-Gwen, a graceful dancer across rooftops, her white and pink suit glowing like a ghost in moonlight. She carried guilt, too, because in her world, Peter died, and she, like Peter in our world, became stronger through sorrow. But she never stopped moving, never stopped hoping. She fought with rhythm and style, and always with purpose. Then there is a man from the far future, the year 2099. His name is Miguel O'Hara. Not bitten, but altered by science. He lives in a world of neon towers and machines, a city of cold steel and synthetic light. But even there, in a place where hope feels manufactured, Spider-Man still rises. His claws are sharp, his vision is enhanced, but at his core, he too carries the same burden, and the same belief that great power must serve others. There's a Spider-Man who wears a trench coat, a fedora. He lives in a black and white world, noir, smoky, mysterious. He speaks softly, moves like a shadow. And in his dark little corner of the multiverse, he fights corruption with quiet resolve. There's even one who's a pig. Yes, Spider-Ham, a cartoon, a joke, a smile. But behind the laughter, he too believes in doing the right thing. He reminds us that courage can come in any form, and that laughter is its own kind of strength. There are hundreds, thousands, spider people of every kind. Some in armor, some who swing on webs made of light, some who wear no mask at all. They come from tragedies, from peace, from science, from fate. But in every world, there is a spider. And sometimes, these spiders meet. The Spider-Verse pulls them together when a threat rises beyond one reality. They come not as strangers, but as kindred spirits. They teach each other, learn from one another, grow stronger together. Because the spider is not one story, it is many, a tapestry of loss, courage, and love woven across dimensions. And at the heart of each story is the same truth, that anyone, no matter who they are, can be a hero. All it takes is a choice. So tonight, as you rest beneath your own sky, know that somewhere, in some world, a spider swings through the dark, watching over the city, fighting for good, and reminding us all that we are never truly alone, because the mask could fit anyone, even you. Part 6. Major Arcs. Some stories feel like dreams, others like storms, but every now and then a chapter comes along that changes everything. In Peter Parker's life, some of those chapters were too big to ignore. Moments where his world tilted and never returned to the same place again. Let me tell you a few of them. softly, as if we're flipping through old comic pages by lamplight. The Clone Saga. It began with a man who looked exactly like Peter. Same eyes, same memories, same pain. He called himself Ben Reilly, a clone created by a villain named the Jackal, who wanted to see what would happen when identity itself was broken. At first, Peter rejected him. The idea that someone else could wear his face, live his life, feel what he felt. But Ben wasn't a threat. He was a brother, of sorts. Ben had made a life of his own, working in coffee shops, drifting through cities, trying not to be noticed, trying to stay out of Peter's shadow. But when danger came back to New York, when villains rose again, Ben put on a mask. He became the Scarlet Spider. Bright red hoodie, wrist web shooters, a new name but the same heart. There came a moment when they both wondered, what if Peter was the clone and Ben the original? The tests were inconclusive. The emotions weren't. But through it all, they fought side by side, and in the end, Ben sacrificed himself to save Peter. And as Ben faded away, his final words weren't angry. They were peaceful, because he had proven something. He was real, not because of his DNA, but because of his choices. The next is called Civil War. There was a time when the world of heroes broke in half. A tragic battle involving young heroes had gone wrong. Innocent lives were lost, and the government responded swiftly. A Superhuman Registration Act was passed. All heroes must register, must reveal who they really were. Some supported it, led by Iron Man. Others resisted, led by Captain America. And caught in the middle was Peter Parker. Tony Stark had taken Peter under his wing, gave him a new suit, more tech, more tools, a shining future. Tony asked Peter to stand beside him, to unmask publicly, to tell the world, "I am Spider-Man." And Peter did it. On live television, before the nation. He revealed his face, his name, his truth. For a moment, he was free. But freedom has a cost. Soon, villains knew where he lived, who his family was. Aunt May was shot. And Peter realized something painful. Tony Stark didn't protect him, he exposed him. And so Peter switched sides, joined Captain America, fought against the very system he once trusted. It tore the superhero community apart. Friends fought friends. Ideals clashed like thunder. But Peter held on to his values. He learned a hard lesson. Trust your conscience, even when the world pushes back. One more day. Aunt May lay in a hospital bed. Her breaths were shallow. The bullet had done its damage. Peter had tried everything. Doctors, science, magic. Nothing could save her. And so, he turned to someone else. Mephisto. A devil in the Marvel universe. A being who didn't want money or souls. He wanted something pure. He offered Peter a bargain. He would save Aunt May's life, but in exchange, Peter and Mary Jane's marriage would be erased from reality. No more rings, no wedding, no shared apartment. No "I love you" whispered across rooftops. Peter was devastated. Mary Jane, too. But they both loved May. And so, they agreed. With a single whispered promise, their love was rewritten, vanished into the wind of time. The arc was called One More Day, and what followed was Brand New Day. A fresh start, new apartment, new memories. Old love reduced to something distant, familiar but faint. And yet, even with that loss, Peter kept moving. Because sacrifice is the thread that binds every act of Spider-Man's heroism. Peter Parker doesn't live in one moment or one tragedy. He lives in the space between them, in the recovery, in the choice to stand again, even when love is lost, even when trust is broken, even when he's not sure who he is anymore. He always returns to one truth. With great power comes great responsibility, and that means showing up. Not just when it's easy, but when it hurts the most. These weren't just stories. They were transformations, wounds that became wisdom. The Clone Saga taught Peter who he truly was. Civil War taught him when to walk away from power. And One More Day taught him that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet sacrifice that no one ever sees. Part 7. Relationships and Humanity.
Spider-Man is strong. Spider-Man is fast.
He swings through storms, fights monsters in the dark, and stands tall even when the world is falling apart. But Peter Parker is just a boy from Queens. And what truly makes him strong, what keeps him from losing himself in the mask, isn't just his powers. It's the people he loves. Let's take a moment to sit with them, to walk softly through Peter's heart, and meet the ones who helped him carry the weight. Aunt May. She's the first light in his story. A steady hand, a warm voice. After Peter's parents died, she and Uncle Ben became his entire world. Aunt May was gentle, but strong. She worried over Peter's health, his grades, whether he'd eaten lunch. But she never stopped believing in him. Even after Uncle Ben was gone, after Peter grew distant, after he became something more than human, she remained his anchor. In some versions of the story, she knows the truth. She sees past the mask, and she tells him, "You're still my boy." Peter would fight gods for Aunt May. But it's the quiet things, fixing her roof, walking her to the market, making her tea, that mean the most. She is his home. Then there's her, Mary Jane, the girl next door, the spark in Peter's story, the tiger who walked in with a smile and said, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot." At first she was a mystery, a whirlwind, all confidence and charm. But Peter saw deeper. Behind the smile was a woman who understood pain, who knew what it meant to lose, to hide parts of yourself from the world, and to love someone dangerous. She accepted Peter, both the boy and the hero. She didn't just tolerate the mask, she stood beside it. Through battles, through heartbreak, through timelines that erased their wedding. Even then, the love stayed. In every version, in every world, Mary Jane always finds Peter. And he always finds her. Because some loves don't fade. They echo. Harry Osborn. He was Peter's best friend, and sometimes his greatest tragedy. Harry Osborn, son of Norman the Green Goblin. He grew up in wealth, but not in love. His father's shadow followed him everywhere, and though Harry smiled, joked, tried to belong, there was always a storm in his heart. Peter and Harry shared laughter, classes, late-night talks, and college stress. They were brothers in many ways, but the sins of the father often fall on the son. When Harry discovered who Peter was and what his father had done, his world cracked. Sometimes they were friends, sometimes enemies. And yet, beneath the chaos, they always cared. Even in the darkest moments, Peter never gave up on Harry, because forgiveness is a kind of strength too. Flash Thompson. At first glance, he was the bully, the loud voice in high school hallways, always ready with a shove or a sneer. Flash Thompson tormented Peter, mocked him, pushed him into lockers. But people change. Over time, Flash joined the army. He served bravely, and when he returned, he carried scars you couldn't always see. And Peter? He never held a grudge, because beneath the teasing beneath the fists, there was another kind of pain. Eventually, Flash became one of Peter's biggest supporters, even becoming a hero in his own right, bonded with the alien symbiote not as Venom, but as Agent Venom, a protector, a soldier, redeemed. Their journey, from rivals to brothers, is proof that no one is beyond change.
The ones he couldn't save. There are others too. People who shaped Peter, not through presence but through absence. Gwen Stacy. The girl he loved. The one who slipped through his web. Her memory never leaves him. She walks with him in silence, a soft ache in the background of every choice. Uncle Ben. The first loss. The one that started it all. Peter hears his voice in the quiet. With great power. And though Ben is gone, his words are never far. These relationships, they are the fabric of Spider-Man's story, not the costumes, not the villains, but the people who know his laugh, his guilt, his kindness, because before he's a symbol, he is a son, a friend, a partner, a boy, trying his best. And that's what makes him powerful. Not his webs, not his strength, but his heart. So as the night grows quiet and the world slows down, remember this: being human is not a weakness. It is a gift. And for Spider-Man, it's the one thing that saves him again and again. Part 8. Legacy and the Future.
Every story ends, but some stories echo forever. Spider-Man's journey has been told through thousands of pages, across decades, timelines, and multiverses. And still, we return to it. Again and again. Because Spider-Man isn't just a hero. He's an idea, a promise, that no matter how hard the day has been, we can choose to rise, to care, to keep going, even if our hands are shaking, even if we're afraid. Peter Parker is the heart of it all. The boy from Queens, the orphan who lived with guilt, the student who worked late nights, the man who lost and lost and lost again, but never let it harden him. His legacy isn't built on victory. It's built on compassion. And because of that, others followed in his footsteps. Maybe Morales, a boy from Brooklyn, quiet, artistic, bitten by a spider just like Peter, but his journey was different. New enemies, new powers, a new voice. He doubted himself at first, wondered if he was worthy of the mask. But he learned, as Peter did, that being Spider-Man isn't about being perfect. It's about getting back up. And Miles did that. He became a symbol for a new generation. Not a replacement, but an expansion. The world grew wider with him in it. Gwen Stacy, Spider-Woman. In another world, she wore the mask. Not Peter. Her story too was one of loss and redemption. Of finding her voice in a world that wasn't always ready for her. And still, she danced across rooftops with grace. She fought not to escape the past, but to protect the future. There are many more. Miguel O'Hara in 2099, a scientist from the future. Penny Parker, a girl bonded with a robotic suit and psychic spider. Cindy Moon, Silk, born of the same bite as Peter. Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman with a story all her own. They are all part of the web now. A multiverse of meaning,
each one shaped by Peter's first step, each one carrying the thread forward. And what about Peter? What happens when he grows older, when the city changes, when he's no longer the boy, but the mentor? In some stories, he trains Miles. In others, he retires. Sometimes, he dies. But even then, he is never truly gone. Because Spider-Man is an idea, a hope, a reminder that goodness can wear ordinary shoes, can walk through pain, and still keep helping. In a world of flashing lights and falling stars, Peter Parker taught us something simple: that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall, as long as you get back up. As long as you keep trying. Because sometimes being a hero means just holding on to your kindness, to your heart, to your humanity. A final whisper. So now, as we close this story, as the city lights dim and the sky grows quiet, know this: the story of Spider-Man never truly ends. It lives in every person who chooses love over hate, responsibility over comfort, hope over despair. It lives in you. Because maybe the spider's bite wasn't random. Maybe it was a call to become more, to care deeply, to lift others, even when no one's watching. Good night, Peter. Good night, New York. Good night, Spider-Man. The web continues, and you are part of it.